He told me he was asleep, yet his Spotify was playing their playlist until 3 a.m. I tell myself I'm not the kind of person who checks the green dot or stares at typing ellipses. But that night, the apartment felt like an aquarium, and I was the only fish awake. The kettle hissed, the bathroom fan ticked, the radiator coughed a hollow little sound like a drunk trying to apologize. Max had texted at 12:11. Dead. Phone off. Love you. Sleep. And it should have been enough. I rinsed my mug anyway and tried not to think about the way he'd kissed my forehead like he was blessing a child, not a girlfriend. I turned off the lights to fake tiredness. My phone face down on the table, notifications silenced. I lasted exactly 3 minutes before flipping it over and opening Spotify the way some people open their prayer books. There's comfort in the dumb green interface and the little circles of album art. The way everything stays where you leave it. Except it didn't. A thin gray banner slid over the top of my screen, almost apologetic. Listening on, Mac Studio. For a second, my brain refused. The human brain protects you from knives by pretending they're spoons. I tapped it. It expanded. The exact track title, the exact playlist art, the exact tiny pink heart I had set when we were still two people trying to build one taste. Only us. That was the title he'd typed with a smirk while we were barefoot in his kitchen. 3 months and 57 shared coffees ago. It used to feel like a promise. Now at 1:37 a.m. So it felt like a fire alarm muted by a pillow. I watched the progress bar crawl. 1 second, 2, the tiny diamond sliding across exactly where we'd left it last week. A mistake, I told myself. Autoplay. Some random server hiccup. I locked my phone, pressed it to my sternum, and held my breath as if silence could fight data. On the other side of the wall, my downstairs neighbor coughed, and then a bass note trembled through the pipes. Real or memory, I couldn't tell. I put the phone down, paced to the sink, washed a teaspoon that did not need washing. The banner was still there when I looked again, but a new line had joined it. Devices available. Out of habit, I tapped the list. Mac Studio at the top, glowing green. Under it, my phone. And below that, like a stranger waiting for a handshake, VWTIGUANMEDIA. I laughed, ridiculous and dry. I don't know any T-gun. We don't know any T-gun. The laugh vanished as quickly as it came. I took a screenshot. The shutter sound was too loud in the tiny kitchen. I turned my volume down and took another one, a more careful angle, with the time visible. 1:42. The song switched. Then another. Our playlist is stitched with in-jokes and tiny betrayals of taste. My melancholy, his drums, our compromise at track 8 where the guitar solo goes nowhere, but he loves it anyway. I watched them flick by like stations we used to get off at. The bar touched 2 o'clock and the world didn't end. At 2:11, I thought of the coffee place on Yaroslaviv Val that stays open all night. The one with the sticky tabletops and the vanilla syrup that smells like burnt candy. Max hates that place. He says the espresso tastes like regret. I imagined him hating it there, hating the syrup, hating the people who come in at 2 a.m. with glitter on their cheeks. Imagined him doing all of that while asleep in his bed like he said. I told myself to close the app. I told myself I was being dramatic. I watched until 3:02 when the banner flickered and the green dot winked out and the screen gave me back my own library like a dog dropping a slipper it shouldn't have chewed. I woke to the unkind light of a winter morning and a text from him at 7:09, casual as a stretch. Morning, Moon. Slept like a rock. You? I stood in the bathroom while the shower steamed the mirror and typed. Erased? Typed again. Weird thing. Spotify said you were playing our playlist last night. He answered faster than my shampoo could hit my hair. Ha. It does that sometimes. Ghost sessions. You know how it is. I don't know how it is. Also got this random car and devices? Tigon El Mao. Probably my neighbor's Bluetooth. Building is wild. He added a laughing emoji like a cork in a bottle. He kissed my temple when I met him later. Said, you smell like oranges. And the part of me that looks for mercy almost believed him. Almost. Because his shirt smelled like perfume that wasn't mine. Not floral. Not my soft laundry detergent. Citrus. Yes, but sharper. A cologne-leaning feminine thing that bites the throat on the exhale. He noticed me noticing and leaned in. Theatrical. New studio spray. Clients brought it. Please don't become allergic to my job. He smiled. I smiled back. He always makes it sound like love is the unreasonable variable and not him. By noon, I'd decided to tell Lara, because if you can't trust the friend who told you to stop buying cheap mascara and drink water, who can you trust? She listened, eyes narrowed, stirring her iced latte like you can solve lies by making whirlpools. Okay, she said finally. Either you believe him and you stop looking for ghosts, Or you assume the ghost is a person and you go full detective. But pick one because the middle will eat you. I asked if Spotify really throws devices around like confetti. Sometimes you can see who's listening together, she said, tapping through her own app. Open Connect. It'll show you what's nearby. I opened it on my walk home and nearly bumped into a street sign because there it was again, polite as a business card. VWTIGUANMEDIA. I didn't tap it. I just took another screenshot. The sky gray above me like a lid. That evening, Max said he had a late edit. Nothing big. Ambiance for a cafe ad. The irony of that almost killed me. And that he'd call before bed. I pretended to be busy too. I cooked pasta I didn't want and let the sauce reduce past sweetness into something like smoke. At 1:03, I gave up again and opened Spotify. Listening on Mac Studio. I didn't gasp this time. The track was the one I put on for mornings when the window needs bribing to let in light. He never plays that one when I'm there. The progress bar slid, an indifferent Blue River. The device list added a dot next to the Tegan, as if it were clearing its throat to say I am here too. I wrote the times down on paper because it felt more real that way. 1:37, 1:58, 2:13. At 2:21, there was a tiny tremor in the floorboards, like someone else's washing machine spinning or the building sighing. I went to my door and looked through the peephole at the yellow stairwell light. Nothing. A soft knock made me jump hard enough to bite my tongue. It was Alla from downstairs, in a floral robe and slippers that looked like two small bears sleeping. Sorry, dear, she said. You're awake? The bass again. Not you. I hear it above you. After 2. My ears keep time now that my husband is gone. She smiled, which is how some people apologize for being alive. Do you want earplugs? I said no. Thanked her. Watched her shuffle away. I texted Max. Random Q. Are you at the studio? The status said delivered, and then nothing. And I stared at the word like it could bloom into red if I watered it with enough attention. The track rolled into another. Our playlist knows how to press on bruises. At 2:56, I got a push from my internet provider because I forgot to turn off those little alerts. New device connected to Mac Studio Wi-Fi. It showed only a partial MAC address that meant nothing to me, just a timestamp that felt like a door slamming somewhere I couldn't reach. I took a screenshot. My camera roll became a gallery of green banners and gray text and times at which trust frayed. I thought about walking to his studio. It's 20 minutes if you don't stop for a taxi or for courage. The night air would taste like metal and someone's laundry. I put on shoes. I took them off. I called Lyra instead of Keys. She didn't pick up. I was about to leave a voicemail when my screen lit with an old saved story. One of those archive bubbles the app serves like rewarmed soup. It was Marina months ago, a shot of 2 mugs and a spinning record. The audio low but audible. The same track currently climbing toward its chorus on my screen. The caption was a dumb pun about late nights and early mornings. I watched it twice, 3 times, like staring long enough could make the past behave. Then I laughed very softly because of course I'd kept that, of course I had. I collect evidence even when I don't know what it's for. At 3:02, the banner vanished. Everything local again. My device only, the world small, survivable. My legs gave out the way a tent does when you pull one pole, suddenly and without drama. I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, and breathed through my nose until I could feel my hands again. Morning would make everything stupid. Morning would flatten the shadows. Morning would give him jokes and me shame for not laughing. I stood, rinsed the mug I hadn't used, and told the room I was not going to cry like an unpaid extra in my own life. I opened the hidden album on my phone and dragged the new screenshots in, gave the folder a name no one would click. Taxes. Then I wrote the times on a sticky note and stuck it to the inside of my pantry door where only the flower and I would ever see it. At 8:12, sunny like nothing had ever happened. He texted a photo of his desk. Coffee, waveform on the screen, our dumb little ceramic rabbit I left there once and he pretends he likes. Proof of life, he wrote. Lunch later, I stared at the rabbit and thought about how objects lie without meaning to. Sure, I typed. Then, because I could either be soft or be precise, I added, also the Tegan keeps showing up. He replied with a voice note this time, that low smile in his mouth. Babe, Bluetooth is chaos. It's like pigeons, everywhere, no plan. Trust me. I played it twice. In the background there was a clink. A spoon against porcelain, a second cup somewhere near his microphone. The spoon made a hollow chime I had never heard in his studio. Maybe he bought a new mug. Maybe cups migrate at night. When I finally met him, he rapped me like warmth solves math. You good? He asked, too bright, too eager. Yeah, I lied. Too polite to break our shared furniture with truth. He smelled like mint gum, and the lemony cleaner they use at that cafe he pretends to hate. He pulled back to look at me. "You're doing the eyes," he said, playful. "What eyes?" "The crime show eyes." I laughed because I always do when he names me. "Then don't give me a crime," I said, and he kissed me like a promise he didn't plan to keep. That night, I was determined to be asleep before the city remembered it could be loud. I brushed my teeth, turned my phone face down, turned it back up, watched the lock screen clock march past 1. I did not open Spotify. I did not open anything. I lay on my back and counted the seconds between the radiator's little sighs. When it had been long enough to call it discipline, I opened the app. The banner greeted me instantly. Listening on Mac Studio. No flourish, no cruelty, just fact. The track was one he hated. Maybe that should have comforted me, that whoever was there wasn't curating my pain. It didn't. I took one last screenshot with the time crisp in the corner. 1:37. The device list blinked, and in its polite neutral font, the car reappeared. VWTIGUANMEDIA. I stared at those words until they turned into nonsense. Then I locked my phone, placed its screen down like an offering, and told the dark, out loud, "Okay." The next morning felt too bright, like someone had left the sun on full blast to cover up a mess. I went through motions, coffee, emails, pretending to read news I didn't care about, but all I could think about was the Tegan. VWTEGUANMEDEA. The name floated in my skull like a stubborn pop-up ad. Max was cheerful when he called around noon. He was always cheerful when he wanted to reset the narrative. Last night was brutal. Mix kept collapsing. Didn't get much done. He yawned theatrically. I bit my tongue. If I said, "So you weren't sleeping?" he'd call it a trap. If I said who was listening, he'd say, "What listening?" Instead, I said I had a deadline and couldn't talk long. He sounded almost relieved. When I met Lara after work, she ordered a double shot like she was preparing for trial. I showed her the screenshots, the list of devices, the timestamps. She leaned close. Phone between us like we were smuggling secrets. "That's not nothing," she said. "You know you can see who's listening together, right? Through Connect?" I frowned. "Together?" She tapped her own app, flicked to the little screen share icon. "If someone else is playing it at the same time, it'll show up. That T-gun isn't random." I tried it later while walking home. My fingers shook as I pulled down the menu. For a second, I thought nothing would show. Then there it was again. Quiet, brazen. VTIGUANMEDIA. Glowing like it belonged. I snapped a screenshot so fast my thumb cramped. I didn't dare tap it, didn't want to connect and expose myself like some digital voyeur. That night, I told myself I'd leave it alone. But curiosity is an infection. By 1:30, my phone was in my hand. Listening on Max Studio. The track was one of his. He'd slipped it into our playlist months ago. A home-recorded demo with scratchy vocals he never wanted anyone to hear but me. At 1:59, the Tegan joined. Green dot pulsing. I pictured a stranger's dashboard glowing. Someone's fingers drumming the wheel to our song. My stomach twisted. The next day, a clue arrived wrapped in something ordinary. I got an email receipt from my credit card app. It forwards all charges to me and Max because we once thought transparency was romantic. At 2:11 a.m., his card had bought a flat white and an almond croissant at that all-night cafe by Yaroslav Ival. My hands went cold. I stared at the timestamp until the numbers blurred. Why would he be there at 2 in the morning if he was in bed, dead asleep, and worse? Why there, the one cafe he claimed to despise? When I asked about his night, he was smooth as a record skipping. Studio, same as always. I showed him the email on my phone. His laugh was quick, brittle. "Oh, that. I let Carrillo use my card. He was starving, said he'd pay me back. Chill." It should have soothed me. But when I saw Carrillo later that week outside the studio, his story wobbled. "Yeah, late shift. We were testing some Blue Dog plugin thing. Didn't really leave the building." He rubbed his neck, eyes darting everywhere but mine. His cheeks flushed with guilt or maybe caffeine. The cracks widened. I noticed his shirt smelled faintly like perfume again. Not my mild lavender detergent, but something citrus sharp. I didn't say a word. Silence is a weapon if you let it sharpen. He kissed my forehead like usual, but I kept my lips pressed tight. One night, scrolling mindlessly, I landed on Marina's old archive. I almost scrolled past it until the sound registered. A clip of 2 mugs on a counter, music humming in the background. The same track that had been playing at 2 a.m. On Max's account. The caption? Early morning vibes. My chest caved. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe not. But the fact that my first instinct was, of course it's not, told me everything about where trust had gone. The following evening, I tried to confront him without accusing. I asked if Spotify sometimes replays old playlists automatically. He grinned, kissed my cheek. Exactly. Ghost sessions. See? You're paranoid. He poured me wine, pressed a glass into my hand, toasted to love surviving technology glitches. I clinked glasses. I even smiled. But when I sipped, I caught the faint citrus scent again. Stronger this time, like someone else's ghost hovering between us. That night, I didn't wait until 1. I opened Spotify just after midnight. Banner. Mac Studio. Playlist, Only Us. Song, that melancholy ballad he always skipped when I was in the room. My pulse thudded as the minutes ticked. At 12:56, the T-GAN blinked in. At 1:07, it was gone. At 1:37, back again. A dance, a pattern, a heartbeat. I wrote each timestamp on paper, circled them in red like evidence boards in crime shows. When the banner finally vanished, I closed my eyes and whispered to the dark, "This isn't paranoia. This is proof." And in my chest, something cold and certain answered back. By then, my phone was a diary I didn't want, a graveyard of screenshots and timestamps. I started numbering them, as if organizing the chaos would give me clarity. Evidence 01, Mac Studio, 137. Evidence 02, VWTIGUANMEDIA, 159. Evidence 03, receipt for a croissant he swore he hated. My notes app looked like I was preparing for trial, not love. One evening, sitting cross-legged on my bed, I decided if I was going to drive myself insane, I might as well do it methodically. I opened the Spotify history tab and scrolled back minute by minute. There it was, our playlist, rolling neatly through the night, each track like a breadcrumb leading away from me. I copied the exact times into a spreadsheet, watching the pattern emerge. Peaks at 1:30, again at 2:15, always shutting down after 3, made me nauseous. People are creatures of habit, even in betrayal. I might have convinced myself I was hallucinating if not for Allah again. She caught me in the stairwell, clutching her grocery bags like they weighed 100 pounds. "You were awake?" she asked casually, her eyes sharp. "Lift doors, 318? Heavy footsteps. Not you." She tapped her temple. My ears don't lie. Insomnia makes them strong. I laughed awkwardly, pretended not to care, but inside I was tallying. 318, lift, witness. That same week, my phone buzzed with a push notification I didn't remember enabling. New device connected to Mac Studio Wi-Fi at 2:56. The number string underneath meant nothing, but the timestamp landed like a blow. I screenshotted so fast my hand shook. It felt like the universe itself was sick of his lies and had started sending me receipts. By Saturday, I'd roped Lara into a midnight stakeout, though I didn't call it that. We walked past Marina's old building because I needed to see, even if I didn't know what. My stomach nodded as we turned the corner, and there it was. A black VW T-GAN parked out front, dashboard glowing faintly blue. Music thumped inside, low but recognizable. I froze, nails digging into my palm. Lara squinted. "Coincidence," she muttered, but her voice wasn't steady. Later, scrolling our playlist again, I found something I'd never noticed. A private folder attached called 2 a.m. Kitchen. Half the tracks overlapped with Only Us, but some were new, raw, half-finished demos. The title made my skin crawl. 2A. Meth wasn't just random, it was ritual. Their ritual. When I finally confronted Max, my voice shook, but my words were sharp. Why is our playlist playing at 2 every night? Why does a Tigan keep connecting? Why are there receipts with your card at cafes you hate? He didn't flinch. He didn't even look guilty. He leaned back, arms crossed, and smirked. "You're spinning fairy tales from algorithms. You'll ruin us because you can't let go of a glitch." He kissed the top of my head like I was a child with a nightmare. Gaslighting dressed as comfort. That night, as if the world wanted to punish me further, my phone pinged with a new message. No name, just an email from a burner account. Inside was a file attachment, a log from Mac Studio. Device connections listed out with brutal clarity. Max Studio, iPhone, mine, and, my breath caught, iPhone Marina. I stared until the screen blurred, my pulse thundering in my ears. Proof. Undeniable, printed in black and white. Not a ghost session. Not a glitch. A person. Her. When I finally crawled into bed, I didn't sleep. I lay there with the glow of the phone lighting my ceiling, the playlist still humming somewhere in the city, and thought, maybe love doesn't die with silence. Maybe it dies with music that isn't meant for you anymore. I gathered every screenshot, every receipt, every glitch-turned proof into one folder. I named it Work Docs, so I wouldn't have to look at it unless I wanted to. Inside were the ghosts of my relationship. Green banners, time-stamped logs, cafe charges at hours that don't belong to lovers who sleep. One Sunday, I invited Max over with the fakest calm I could muster. I poured tea, lit a candle, told him I wanted to talk without fighting. He nodded, suspiciously agreeable. I pressed record on my phone under the table, the red dot glaring at me like conscience. Then I slid the evidence across. Printouts of the receipts, screenshots of the devices, the Wi-Fi log. He scanned them, smirk tugging at his mouth. "You're, what, building a case?" he said. "Jesus, Nick, this is unhealthy." "Oh, answer me," I whispered. "Were you with her?" His jaw flexed. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd admit everything. Instead, he leaned back, voice low and soothing like I was the hysterical one. "It's not like that. Marina, she just needed someone. She's been struggling. Sometimes we listen to music, that's all. I didn't want to worry you." The words landed like broken glass. Music, that's all. As if music wasn't the marrow of us. As if staying up till 3 a.m. To play our playlist with her was harmless. My throat burned. "You lied," I managed. He reached for my hand. "I protected you." Later, when he left, Lara stormed into my apartment after I texted. She listened to the recording, face hard. "He's still lying," she snapped. He admitted nothing. "You want the truth? You need to catch him in it. Not wait for him to gift you half a confession." Well, I didn't want to become a detective anymore. But the universe had other plans. The next day, Allah knocked on my door, slippers squeaking. She handed me a small USB stick, my grandson's baby monitor. Sometimes it records the hall by mistake. "Look." I plugged it in, pulse pounding. Grainy footage. The apartment entrance at 2:47 a.m. A man entering with a woman. Broad shoulders, familiar gait, a baseball cap low over his face. The girl's hair long, loose. The angle never showed their faces, but my stomach knew. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat back numb. Then, as if mocking me, my phone pinged. Another late-night banner. Listening on, Mac Studio. The playlist rolling until 3:03 a.m. Only this time when I checked the devices list, my blood froze. It didn't just show his studio. It showed Lyra AirPods. Wah! My best friend's name, glowing green. My vision blurred, pulse roaring in my ears. I whispered her name like a curse, like a prayer, like I didn't know who she was anymore. I couldn't breathe when I saw it. Lyra AirPods. My best friend's name sitting right there under the playlist I thought only belonged to me and Max. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the phone. I refreshed, praying it was some glitch, some trick of Spotify's insane Connect system. But no, her device pulsed green, alive, as if she was right there with him. The next morning, I didn't text her. I couldn't. Every word that came to mind tasted like rust. She showed up at my door anyway, casual as ever, iced coffee in hand. "You look like hell," she said, stepping inside before I could stop her. I wanted to scream, to shove the evidence in her face. Instead, I whispered, "Why does your name show up on our playlist at 3 in the morning?" Her face went slack, then pale. "What?" she stammered, pulling out her phone, scrolling through. No, Nick, I swear, I wasn't with him. I fell asleep watching Netflix. I don't even know how that—" She stopped when she saw my expression. "Listen, sometimes Spotify keeps old sessions alive. If I played the playlist yesterday, it might still show today. That's real. Google it." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to burn every screenshot and crawl back into the comfort of ignorance. But something gnawed at me. I spent the afternoon reading forums, hunting for technical explanations. She wasn't lying completely. Yes, sessions can linger, but not like this. Not synced, minute by minute, track by track, into the night. And then Carrillo texted. Just one line, from an unknown number I almost didn't recognize. "The Tegan isn't Marina's." My stomach dropped. What did that mean? I started stitching the puzzle together. The cafe receipt, the Wi-Fi log, the Tegan, and now Lara's name. That night, I walked past her office, an SMM agency near the square, and there it was, parked right outside like a black dog waiting loyally. VW Tiguan, glowing dash faint under the streetlight. I knew before I knocked on her door. I knew before she opened it with her eyes red and wet. "I didn't want to tell you," she blurted out. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It was one night. He came to me after a fight with you. He kissed me. I didn't stop it." Her voice cracked. I wanted to hurt him, to prove he's garbage. But Nick, I didn't want to hurt you. Fron. Her words sliced deeper than any lie Max had ever told. My best friend. The one person I trusted enough to confess my paranoia to. My chest caved, breath shallow. So you proved it by becoming part of it? I whispered. She sobbed. She reached for me. I stepped back. That night, Max showed up at my place with a bouquet so large it looked like a bribe. His face was smug, rehearsed. I'll tell you the truth now, he said, dropping the flowers on my counter. Yes, it was Lara. Once. But do you see why? You made me feel policed, cornered. She was there when you weren't. I stared at him, at the flowers, at the man who could stand in my kitchen and call betrayal my fault. He actually smiled, like this was resolution, like confession was a gift. And in that moment, I understood. Marina hadn't been the ghost in the playlist. The Tegan wasn't hers. The betrayal hadn't just been one person slipping through the cracks. It was the two people closest to me, holding the knife together, twisting it in rhythm with our favorite songs. When he left, the silence was unbearable. Not the silence of peace. The silence of something broken so badly, even music couldn't glue it back. The night after his confession, the apartment felt haunted by everything unsaid. I sat on the couch with the bouquet he'd left, its petals already drooping, the smell of lilies turning sour in the heat. My phone was silent, but that silence pressed on me harder than any notification. Lara hadn't called. Max hadn't texted. It was just me and the heavy throb of betrayal in my chest. I couldn't stay. I packed a duffel with clothes, my laptop, a toothbrush. I wasn't running so much as stepping out of the fire before I burned alive. At my new place, a friend's spare room with peeling wallpaper, I stared at the blank wall, half expecting the Spotify banner to appear there too. For days, I ignored both of them. I muted their numbers, buried myself in work. But then Lara showed up outside my building, eyes swollen, voice cracked. I'm sorry, she whispered. Not for what I felt, for you. I've loved you for years. That night, it wasn't about him. It was about wanting to break what he had because I couldn't stand watching him waste you. Her words tore through me in ways I didn't know I could be torn. I told her I couldn't forgive. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness isn't a bandage. It's a doorway, and some doors should stay locked. She nodded, tears streaking her face, and pressed a USB into my palm. He's worse than you think. These are work logs. Look, Ibor. That night, I opened the files. They weren't just studio recordings, they were manipulations. He'd masked device names, overlapped tracks, even set-timed sessions to disguise who was listening. It wasn't clumsy cheating, it was deliberate orchestration, a DJ of deception spinning betrayal into playlists. I cried until there was nothing left. Then I sat at my desk and typed everything into a long post. Dates, receipts, screenshots. Not to expose him publicly, not yet, but to remind myself that it was real, that I wasn't crazy. That love hadn't just evaporated, it had been stolen in increments, track by track. The next morning, I did the only thing that made sense. I opened Spotify, found Only Us, and hit delete. My chest ached as the screen flashed confirmation. Then I created a new playlist, title simple, Only Me. I dropped in a soft, instrumental track, the kind that doesn't demand attention but fills the room like quiet courage. At 9:12, my phone buzzed with one last ghost. Max Studio wants to play on your device. I stared at it, finger hovering. Then I pressed decline. The notification vanished, and for the first time in weeks, the silence felt like mine. The first song on my new playlist started, gentle, wordless, carrying me forward. I renamed it 0304, When I Finally Slept. And this time, I really did.